It's a gloomy day, but we're going to be talking about my experience working at the American Natural History Museum in the gift shop as a lead cashier. I will say that this is my own experience. I do not speak for the company. I do not speak for anyone else who has worked there. These are the pros and cons of what it was like for me working there, and I did not stay long. I knew ahead of time that there was a couple little bit of red flags, and it's not exactly what you think. So let's get started. The American Natural History Museum is located on the Upper West Side. It's beautiful. It's one of the biggest ones in the world. You get thousands of people visiting this museum from all over the world. You're going to hear a bunch of different languages. I worked in the gift shops. There are 6 current gift shops. This is always subject to change. Some of them correlate with specific limited time exhibitions. Like right now there's an elephants gift shop because of the elephants exhibit. When you work at the American Natural History Museum gift shops, you're not directly hired by the American Natural History Museum. You're hired by a company called Event Network that is responsible for the gift shops of a lot of different cultural attractions around New York City and across the country. So obviously they're in charge of this one. They also do the Guggenheim Museum, the Intrepid Museum, and a couple others. I know Summit One has a gift shop run by Event Network as well. Cutting straight to the point, my issue is that I feel like they underpay their staff. So as an employee at the gift shops at the American Natural History Museum, you're getting paid $16. That is minimum wage, right? Because in New York City, minimum wage has gone up $1. That is not a lot of money. It is part-time, and we're going to talk about the hours that you can potentially get, but it's part-time. Everyone's part-time, associates, supervisors, which for me is uncommon. As a lead cashier, I was getting paid $17. And for a little bit of perspective, in my old retail job, I was getting paid $19 as a basic associate. That means no added responsibilities, just the duties of what being on a register or being a sales associate would be. So the fact that I was getting paid $17 for a lead cashier, that means having some added responsibilities with the register, with setting up and cashing out, handling all that money, I think kind of sucks, especially when you're working in such a prestigious museum. But this is common. A lot of jobs in the museum field don't pay well, unfortunately, even for the people who have like prestigious degrees. I just needed a bridge job. I was unhappy at my other museum job, so I decided to go here because, first of all, having American Natural History Museum on your resume just looks good. So I was like, maybe I could suck it up, adjust my budget, and make this work long term. Even though the economy is so bad right now, everything is so expensive, I had faith that I was going to be able to make it work. But then a better opportunity came along, so I have since left the job at the American Natural History Museum. I'd say primarily that's the only thing that sucked about working here, is how underpaid we all were, the hours, the stinginess with giving shifts and hours and stuff. I had overheard a conversation between the managers that was very unflattering, and I'm going to get to in a little bit, but that was the issue. I think when I interviewed, I asked them, well, what's the minimum hours that one could be working? And it was like 28 hours, but really when it came time to be in my shifts, a lot of times I was made to clock out earlier than that because there was nothing else to do. So I wasn't even reaching those full 28 hours and getting paid $17, and also having and also with taxes and everything getting taken out, it was not a lot of money. I made it work. Yes, loved the guests that would come. They were so incredibly nice. I will say, like, security at this museum is no joke. They are very abrasive. So when guests come into the gift shops, I think they're always surprised by how nice everyone is, and I think vice versa. Guests are very nice. They're very intrigued by the museum, by the products that we carry, even though they're very overpriced. So I loved the aspect of meeting these guests from all over the world, learning about languages from all over the world. In New York City, you get that type of multicultural experience anyway, but being in a museum is just something special. Like, you meet the coolest people. For me, the actual retail portions of this job were not difficult. Each gift shop is themed, and I got placed in a really good one, a nice quiet one in the newer building, which is the Gilder building. If you've ever been, it is gorgeous. It's cute. It had the best music. So my actual day-to-day experiences were very manageable. I've already been used to working with high traffic areas and stuff, and you don't really feel it, in my opinion, when I was at that gift shop. Like, there's thousands of people, but it's never overwhelming. It was never tiring. I think the shifts went very fast. You would either get an 8-hour shift or like a 6-hour shift. So for me, that was a blast. No complaints there. You're not really doing any like returns, exchanges. It's usually tourists who come and then they never come back. Sometimes occasionally you'll do a refund or return exchange, but for the most part it's very straightforward. You're selling like water bottles and snacks and like cute apparel, and you're answering questions about sizing maybe, because there's no dressing room so people can try it on like right there, and there's a mirror right there. Other gift shops, at the main gift shop there's a 3-level gift shop. I was there for one day and that was definitely more intense. I was on the register most of the day. They don't like for you to stand behind the register the whole time, and I'm gonna get to that, but it was a fun experience. It was a little bit more chaotic in terms of crowds and like a never-ending line, so it does depend. You can't choose what gift shop you end up with. It's just kind of what they decide on their own, and even if they put you at a specific gift shop for weeks and weeks and weeks, they can always change that in the end. There's really no, like, there was a couple people that had permanent placements in different gift shops who had been there for a really long time, but for the most part you didn't know where you were going to end up, and you could always check. There's a little bulletin board where you could always check where you were for that day or that week. I think this is a perfect job for college students, for people who just want a little extra cash but you're not necessarily, you know, like you're still in school or you're doing something else. There's also a bunch of like older women, like more towards 50 to 60s, who like working. They don't want to be home, they want to work, or sometimes they have to. Didn't really get into their exact living situations, but that was also really nice to see. There's kind of people at all walks of life. All my coworkers were amazing. All my supervisors were super cool, down to earth, hilarious, fun, good vibes all around. It's the top managers that I never personally had an issue with, but I would overhear these conversations that I felt were incredibly inappropriate, and also like you weren't really valuing your staff, in my opinion, from what I heard. At some point one of the managers was complaining, or not complaining, was mentioning like, oh, we should be happy because we're having a lot less call outs, and then the other one's like, yeah, that's because I cut everyone's hours. Like, two things that I couldn't stand that were kind of minor is that you are supposed to ask for every transaction, do you want to round up your purchase to donate to the education department? Did that money really go to the education department? To this day I still don't know, because there were very specific milestones that we should be reaching for Event Network. So the bosses of our managers, there was always like a visual display of how far along we've been in donations, and that's something that was mentioned during each huddle, was like, oh, we made $75,000 in donations. So it's very abrasive. It's very annoying to hear how much we've made with donations or how much the stores have made revenue when we're getting paid practically pennies in this economy. That's capitalism, I know, but it's still incredibly frustrating. So I hated having to ask people, do you want to donate 50 cents, 90 cents? Like, if it wasn't an even number, you had to ask them if they wanted to donate. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of times I did not ask them because they're already spending so much money. Like, especially people who come for water. Water is $4 per bottle at this museum. It's never an even number. So the only time it was really even numbers was when they're buying only apparel, because there's never any sales tax with that. So there's different ways of saying it. You're looked upon as a good employee if you're obviously getting high donations. Like, they rank it. You can even check how you're doing. Mine was always really low. I'll be honest with you. I just didn't feel the need. And I know that's not as bad as asking for credit card signups and stuff, but still, I just didn't feel comfortable. And I would do it sometimes, and sometimes people will be, everyone's usually really understanding, and 9 times out of 10 they'll be like, yeah, sure, I'll donate it. But sometimes you'll get people who are super obnoxious and we're like, well, I made a generous donation at the front, like and I'm like, all you need to say is no. I don't need to hear all this. One last thing that really bothered me was that you weren't supposed to stand behind the register, and that makes sense in certain situations when there's other things that have to be done. I get it, but when your store is kind of small, I felt weird stepping away from the register, because the second I would, someone needed to check out. So to me, it feels more inappropriate for someone to have to come up to me and be like, hey, can you ring me up for this, versus me being by the register. You know what I'm saying? And I get why they wanted us off of the registers, because they want us to engage with guests and stuff. But at the end of the day, there's people who want to purchase their stuff and go. You know, they want to keep looking at the actual stuff. So I felt really uncomfortable walking away and having someone approach me and then have to be like, hey, can you do, or sometimes they wouldn't approach us and they'd just be standing at the register and none of us are there. I just feel like that just doesn't make sense to me. Or I would try to anticipate their movements. So if I felt like they were still browsing, I would not be next to the register, but that made me look at them more, and I don't want them to misunderstand and think that I'm watching them because I think they're going to shoplift. I want to make sure that I am checking people out in a timely fashion, and to me it didn't make sense to be told, oh, don't hang out there. People would be so paranoid about the cameras, being like, oh yeah, they checked the cameras, like, don't do it. I definitely did it. I stood behind that register, especially when I was alone in the shop for quite some time, because people come in frequently to purchase things, snacks, water, baseball caps, magnets, stickers. Like, I don't want someone to have to go out of their way to find me in the shop for me to ring them out. You know what I mean? Like, I could be folding clothes on the other side of the store and not realize. And even though it's not a big store, I think it's still an inconvenience as a guest to have to look for a cashier. On my last day, we had some people, like some leads or something. I really don't know their position because I would never see them anywhere on the floor. I would only see them upstairs in the offices, but they're like, just make sure you're not behind the counter, because they saw us talking behind the counter. We had just rung up a guest that walked away. They just didn't see that portion. And I was so close to be like, listen, it's my last day. I really don't care. I think this is just fine. But I didn't say anything. I was like, yeah, sure. And as soon as they left, I went back to the register because it was a Sunday. People are going to be checking out and they want to do so in a timely fashion. You don't want to get to the register and see no one there. Those are the only gripes I had. Like I said, it was an amazing experience. I love the people. I wanted to stay there longer. So when I put in my 2 weeks, my manager didn't respond to my email, but talked to me in person, was very kind, honestly. It kind of surprised me, and was like, hey, we want to try to make this work. Like, is there any way you can do both? Like, we'll try to be a little bit more flexible. All we're asking for is 1 weekend day in addition to my weekdays. And I did want to make it work, to be honest. I did want to stay there longer. I really loved it. I loved my coworkers. I thought they were so much fun, and I was just getting to know everyone. I was finally getting comfortable. And when I talked to my other job, they wanted full availability and they paid me a lot more, and I was like, never mind. And it was so much easier in my new job to pick up shifts. Like, I am racking up the money now versus dying at 28 hours, or really it was like 25 hours of work. Like, it just wasn't comparable. Like, I emailed her once I had a talk with my new job, and I told her, like, hey, unfortunately it's not gonna work, but if you'd like me to return my ID or anything like that, let me know. And they never responded, and it's been weeks, and I know they're not going to. So it's a shame. I love that museum. I think, like I said, it's perfect if you're a college student, if you're not necessarily looking to make a lot of money, you just want a job just for like a couple, like steady income on the side, something like that. Or if you're in between career changes and you just need, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's the perfect job for that. And I wish I had found this like sooner. I think my first job straight out of high school was like working at the zoo and admissions, which is also nice, but that's a lot more draining than this is. So I definitely do recommend it if you're the right candidate for it. But ultimately for me, it just wasn't enough money. Donations things was weird. The cashier thing was weird. I get it, but it's still, it's frustrating. And yeah, that was my experience working there. I would have loved to have worked in a different department. I was supposed to go for my master's degree in museum studies, and things have changed in my outlook on museums. But yeah, I would have loved to have been in one of the other departments. Like, you kind of see them sometimes, like the people. It's a huge museum. It's like 9 times out of 10, I forgot to mention this, 9 times out of 10, you're not even ringing people up. You're just giving them instructions and directions on where to go, because it's so easy to get lost. But anyway, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you later with another video. Bye.